Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot. Just me today, and we're going to go through a very exciting T20 series. I have to be honest with you, it really was. West Indies edging Sri Lanka 2-1 in the home T20 series, three T20s, and I'll tell you what, there's some memorable moments, so we'll go through it in a second. But before I do, I just want to say I was pretty impressed actually overall with the skill level, I think, from both teams. West Indies clearly have that firepower in the batting lineup. A couple of missing omissions as well. Obviously, notable omissions: Andre Russell, Sheldon Cottrell, Shane Thomas. I think Russell was recovering from COVID. The other two failed to pass fitness tests. A bit disappointing, but don't want to go into that too much. On the other hand, Sri Lanka were missing their newly appointed T20 captain, Shanaka. And you guys might recognize him because he played against South Africa, even. Yeah, he played against South Africa, and then he also played against England in the test matches. So he's a really good player and had a very good LPL. Similarly, Hasaranga had a very good LPL and he played as well. So Shanaka unfortunately wasn't able to come because of these issues. Again, bit disappointing, but overall Sri Lanka had a very strong side. Notably, Kusal Perera was missing, which I thought was quite a surprise. I think he's a very good player, especially in the shorter formats. So I would have expected him to have been in there, especially as he had a very good LPL as well. Okay, let's get straight into this then. First of all, I'm going to do a little bit of a different format to what I normally do and just see how it goes. So, first of all, I want to talk about the positives for both teams. So, I think the positives from this series for West Indies, there's a few. Um, McCoy looked really good, the left armour. He obviously has a similar skill set to someone like Sheldon Cottrell. So I think when Sheldon Cottrell comes back in, he most likely will be the guy to make way. But he's definitely a very talented youngster. He's only 24, and I think he had a very good Super 50 tournament as well, the franchise that the West Indies carry out to select the ODI team. So I think overall he looked pretty good, and there are a couple of just very good wickets that he got where the batsman just didn't quite know whether to go backwards or forwards, and they were unsure about which delivery he was bowling, whether it was a stock quicker delivery or whether it was a cutter or a slow ball. So I just think he seems to have a little bit of that X factor and the tricks and skills needed in the T20 game. So that's a big plus. On top of that, there's quite a few pluses for West Indies here. There's also some negatives, but again, we'll touch upon it later. The opening pair of Lendl Simmons and Alvin Lewis look really good on paper. And also, to be honest with you, once they're in, they look very dangerous. These T20s were not the highest scoring T20s that you're going to see. Partly it was due to, I think, the third T20, the pitch looked a bit too paced, and bowling into the surface and bowling slow balls, etc., taking pace off it definitely was rewarded, which isn't always the case in the West Indies, but sometimes it can be. So in this case, it was. And I think, the bowlers, I would say, had a better time of it than the batsmen as a whole. And we're talking about scores of 130, 160, and 130. So that's very low scoring for T20 games. And hence, you didn't really see big scores from individuals. You're not going to see 100 from anyone. And that showed, I think, in the batting, because, as you can see below in the banner, the scoring banner, that Nasanka, who was actually making his T20 debut, he was the highest run scorer with 81 runs, average of 27. Bandara was 75 runs, average of 38. Lendl Simmons, as I just mentioned, 73 runs at an average of 24. So Lendl Simmons and Alvin Lewis, I think, look like they have the ability to be a very fruitful opening partnership for West Indies. They still need time to gel. Alvin Lewis is very, very young still. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he goes and whether he's able to I think push on and maybe develop a little bit of that maturity as you get older and as you get more experience as a player, because he seems to have immense ability. But I think with him, it's I'll put it in my positives because I think it is a positive. He looks a very good time with the ball, similar to Daniel Simmons. They just need to really make it work. On top of that, for positives, I think um, Sinclair looks really good. The off spinner, he looked very good. He's only 21 years old as well. And look, I think you've got to take it with a pinch of salt when people are getting hit and they might not pick up a wicket. But I think for him to come in and perform the way he did, and he had that unbelievable celebration with the, I don't know, double flip or something, like ridiculous. But yeah, so Sinclair looks really good. He looks a good talent. It was nice to see these young players coming through who have clearly performed on the domestic circuit and they've been given a chance here. And I think, lastly, for me, it's the return of the old guard. Um, Dwayne Bravo, Kieran Pollard obviously has been playing, and he is the captain, but Jason Holder as well. Now, these three players are going to be key for West Indies come the T20 World Cup at the end of this year and potentially next year as well in Australia. So this year's in India, and Dwayne Bravo is a very good player of spin with the bat. Also, his change ups, where he tends to almost bowl off spin at times, again, will be very effective in India. Similarly, Kieran Pollard is that type of bowler, and we know how good he is. Uh, you know, we know how good he is finishing in innings and how good he is in terms of his six hitting ability. So I just think in general, he's just a beast of a player, like an absolute beast of a player. Dwayne Bravo, I was so impressed with him. Seriously, so impressed. Every time I see him bowl, I just think, how does he get away with it? But it's just because the deception and the skill level and the ability he has is second to none, in especially in this format. It is. He is one of the best T20 bowlers out there, and I'm seriously, I am happy. I'm happy to put it out there, and I think he has been for quite a number of years. I mean, he's bowling at the death. He's bowled. They'll just West Indies. Kieran Pollard will look at Dwayne Bravo, and when he wants to restrict runs or he wants to get a wicket, he will look to him. And normally you look to your strike bowler, but Dwayne Bravo almost is that strike bowler in T20s because he's just that good. And one thing that I wanted to point out about him as well is if you look at the difference in speeds, and it's easy to just think to yourself, okay, you know what, I'm going to bowl a delivery like he does of 85 miles an hour or 100 and whatever it's 35 kilometers per hour, and then the ball before or ball after is, I think it was one was something like 80 kilometers per hour. So he's bowling at like 45, 50 miles per hour or something around that region. So he's gone from bowling like a pretty quick seamer, right, to someone who is, okay, he's not express, but he's a fast medium bowler to an off spinner, because those slower balls, majority of them are cutters as well, or they're just big off cutters. And they've got so much off the ball that it ends up being almost like a dart, or in some cases like a regulation off spinner, which is just incredible. So he is someone who has all the tools in the bag. I mean, he's just got all the skills needed to pay the bills in this case. And Dwayne Bravo is just, seriously, he will be integral to West Indies doing well in this year's T20 World Cup. I'm telling you that right now. Kieran Pollard as well. He needs to fire, and we saw that with the 6 6s, which is a massive positive, right, for West Indies. For him to be hitting that, first of all, congratulations to him. Unbelievable achievement. Joining Herschel Gibbs and Yuvraj Singh as the two other people to hit 6 6s in a match. And it's just funny because, when it happened, obviously you had Dhananjaya who'd got a hat trick in the previous over, and then the next over he gets hit for 6 6s, and you're just thinking, oh my God, like what's just happened? And I'm just thinking to myself, when is it ever going to happen again? It probably will never happen again. But bizarre stuff, really bizarre. Dhananjaya, I think after he got hit for the first four, you could see on his face he was like, "Oh no!" And also the boundary's not super big. That doesn't take away at all from his achievement, because I think most of the sixes, at least I'd say five of them, uh, would have been sixes on any ground. And also, you bat to your conditions, right? So he knows that there's shorter boundaries, so you target them, and that's just natural what you do. And you know don't necessarily need to overhit the ball as well, which is the key at times to hitting sixes anyway. And to six hitting, that you don't want to overhit the ball. It's more just timing the ball, quick hands through the ball. And he had that for the majority of it. And it was just the last one, which was a flick. It was effortless flick over deep mid wicket. And he is just a class act as well. And we know how dangerous he is in this format. Not just in this format, but in white ball as well, I would say. So he is a really, really good player. And then you also have, so I think for me, Jason Holder, playing T20s, he has to be. And I think there was this perception that maybe he's not as effective as a T20 bowler as he is in other formats. I disagree. And I think from what I know, and again, I'm, as you guys will know who watch the channel, I don't watch the IPL, but I am privy to what goes on in it. And I know that Jason Holder came in for one of the teams and performed quite well. So, and again, I say this all the time: franchise cricket for me is not on the same level as these bilateral T20, these bilateral T20 series. But what I would say is that it's still a good gauge to see. Okay, well, how well is he going to perform in the T20s potentially? What skill set does he have? And I think, if I'm being honest with you, the tournaments like the LPL, the PSL, and of course, especially the IPL as well, this year are going to be quite important, mainly because the T20 World Cup is going to be in India in subcontinent conditions. Next year, I don't think they have much bearing, to be honest with you, because it's in Australia, but this year it will do. So I think he obviously performed quite well. He's now come back into the West Indies setup, performed quite well, I thought, against Sri Lanka. He was pretty miserly for the most part, and he can get runs as well, and he's a very underrated batsman. I'll tell you that right now. There's a reason why he is seen as in the top three Test all rounders, in the world. And if you can perform in the bat and Test conditions, you'll be able to perform in the bat in T20s for the most part anyway. And he's got long levers. He can hit a long ball. And Jason Holder is just an absolute beast of a player as well. They've got some huge power hitters, some absolutely monumental game changers in that side. And if you just think about them, look, when Russell comes back and Sheldon Cottrell comes back as well, and even a Shane Thomas, I mean, Russell just slotting him in to that batting lineup, they're going to look so dangerous. I do think they're maybe missing one player who I feel like all the players go at 100 miles an hour. Every single West Indies player wants to score big and score quickly. That can potentially backfire. I feel like you do need one player in there, like maybe a Dowden Land like England have got, who does have that ability, but can kind of go through the gears and keep it ticking along. And maybe they're missing that, but I'll discuss that in a bit. So Sri Lanka's positives. Firstly, a couple of debutants obviously performed well, I thought, very well. Namely, Nasanka, opening the batting for Sri Lanka, put on some really, really good opening partnerships with Gunatilaka in a couple of the games, and all one of them at least went on to get a decent score. That for me, that second T20, they did really, really well. I think they were 96 for naught after about nine. I think it was 10 overs, and then after that, the batting collapsed. But their opening pair looks pretty good. I mean, if you can just add in Kusal Prayer in at maybe at 3, then you're looking. I mean, you're laughing, I think, and that team, that opening pair, anyways, the Gunatilaka and Nisanka, they look pretty good, I think. It's interesting. I want to keep an eye on Nisanka, especially because he's new, he's a debutant, and I want to see how he does. Another positive is obviously Gunatilaka can bowl off spin as well, and I thought he was pretty effective at times. Um, I think the other positives is if you look at the top wicket takers, the top 3 are Sri Lankans. Hasaranga, Lakshan Sandakan, and Chamira. Now, I want to touch upon Hasaranga, my boy Hasaranga, because he really is. I think everyone who has watched me do the watch alongs knows that Hasaranga is. I'm a big fan of his. There's a couple of things about him that I think he can work on. But look, he was a top wicket taker with 8 wickets. An average, which again in T20s I think it will be, is 5.25. But he didn't just take wickets. He was so miserly. I think in the last one, the last T20, he went for something like 3.5 and over. So for his 4, he was just unbelievable. Like, I'm not joking. And in this format, I think he's one of the most dangerous bowlers around. He really is. And I think I saw after, someone commenting saying, I can't believe the franchise didn't pick him up. But after these performances, they'll be looking to pick him up, I think, ASAP. So, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. He performed really well on the LPL, the inaugural one, and that got him a call up to the Test squad. He performed quite well there. Got a Test debut 50. Now he's gone on here as well and performed really well on the T20s. And he can't just. It's not just a case of he's a fantastic bowler. No. Don't get twisted. This guy can bat as well, and he can give you quite a lot with the bat. So you've got someone here who is a frontline spinner and can probably bat top 6, top 7, I would say. He probably will find himself at between 6 to 8, but I think ability wise, he's good enough to bat at 6 or 7. I think eventually he will be able to move up, but he's still very young, so he'll still develop, and eventually I think he will be in that top 5. But he is a really, really big talent. He's one of those bowlers similar to Adil Rashid, where he's not a huge turner of his leggy, but his googly turns more than his leg spinner, which is, for me, it's really surprising. But a lot of leg spinners tend to have that, I think. But he's got a very good slider as well. He's skiddy. Um, it's interesting that he's actually. I still feel like he doesn't quite go through it as much. Although watching this T20 series, he did seem to go through it a little bit more than previously, and I think he needs to keep working on that, making sure he really does get round his action to make sure that he gets the overs from the ball, and also he just gets more revs on the ball. But to be honest with you, who am I to say that he should do that because he's performing so well? When you perform this well, do you really need to? There's an argument to say yes. You continue to improve in the game, but also you don't want to fix what isn't broken as well to a degree. So he's a huge talent, and yeah, that's enough about him, isn't it? God, I could talk about him for hours. I just think he's a very, very talented player, and can't wait for him. Lakshan Sandakan as well. I mean, very, very good bowler, the left arm spinner, and yeah, he just bowled super well. Lakshan Sandakan, he really did. I mean, the spin definitely changed the game, and he's a left arm wrist spinner as well. So, very unorthodox. You don't see many around. Obviously, you're thinking of your Kuldeep Yadavs as well, and yeah, so he's someone who you look at and you just think, wow, your Maharajas, as I said, Kuldeep Yadavs. I think there's more around now than maybe there ever used to be. But he is someone who, again, are 6 wickets for him, and Hasaranga were really, really pivotal, especially in that second T20, because I didn't think the runs they'd put on the board were enough. But the spinners tied them down big time, and they basically made sure that West Indies collapsed because they put a lot of pressure on them, and West Indies were struggling to hit the ball off the square. And I think that pairing of Hasaranga and Sandakan is going to be so crucial and pivotal again for the World Cup. And I know I keep on talking about it, and it's in November. It's in whatever we're talking about, 8 to 9 months. But every team will be looking at how they can improve and tweak, and they'll be looking towards that World Cup in India now as the year goes on. So for me, it's like every team that I see play T20s, for each team, I've got like a list of credits, and I'm ticking off things as I watch them play, and that's how I feel about Sri Lanka. That especially in the spin department, they seem to be sorted. Then you can talk about Chamira, and Chamira looks like a bowler who is still pretty raw, but again, I would say that's a positive in the sense that if you look at his skill level, it seems to be there. Again, some things to improve on. He's got express pace, which is what you're going to need in India, especially in subcontinent conditions. Like you can't really go in with a medium pacer unless he's going to be someone like a Dwayne Bravo who has those change ups and has a lot of control. Chamira needs to work a little bit on his control, but pace wise and wicket taking ability he's got. So again, another big plus for Sri Lanka. And then on the batting, Bandara is the final positive that I wanted to mention. Debutant again, 75 runs, again, a second highest top scorer at an average of 37.5. He was impressive. He seems to have this knack to be able to hit boundaries quite often. He was batting quite slowly, actually, in one of the matches. I think it was the second T20. He was going at a strike rate of about 70, 80. But what he did and what you'll see quite a lot nowadays in low scoring T20s is they'll realize, okay, we need to pace ourselves here. And actually, I'm getting tied down. But I realize that if I can stick in and get my eye in and really find my timing, then eventually the time will come that I can accelerate. Obviously, it's a risk because it could backfire and you get out. He was very concentrated and he made sure that he got past that initial tough stage and then he accelerated. And by the time, the innings finished, he was at strike rate 130, 140. And that's what was needed. And I think he seems like a player that's got pretty good cricket IQ. Again, he's quite young. I think Ashwin Bandara as well. And I think it's impressive. I mean, yeah, so he's 22 years old. Sri Lanka, I tell you what, Sri Lanka's future looks really bright. They have some fantastic young players coming through, and the LPL will help as well. I mean, the Sanka's 22 as well. Really good to see. Okay, on to the negatives. Let's start with West Indies. Okay, now the negatives, and again, like I want to be very, very clear on this because I don't want to seem like I'm being too harsh, but there's a few things I think for West Indies, and the first one is Chris Gale. Now, Chris Gale obviously has batted at 3 in the IPL and the PSL, and it seemed to have worked. It seemed to have worked. So I don't think him batting at 3 is a reason why he didn't perform in this series. I do think a couple of the deliveries got quite good. I'm just a little bit like, is he going to be too hit and miss though for West Indies? And in a tournament like the World Cup, is he going to come good? And he could. We know the abilities he's got. When everyone comes back in and they have a full fit, full strength side, will he get in the team? Is my question. And I don't know. If I'm being honest with you, I don't know whether he should be in the team. I think ability wise, he definitely should be, but it's about consistency. And I don't think they'll look at this and say, okay, well, you haven't performed, so we'll drop you out. No, I think they'll say they'll be happy that one, he cut the PSL short to make himself available for this, so that he could be in contention for the World Cup. And secondly, they'll be thinking, well, okay, it's just one series. Yes, it is one series, but I'm going to have to keep tabs on it because if he has another series, I don't know if he's playing the ODIs. I don't think he will be playing the ODIs. Yeah, I mean, if he has another T20 series like this, they'll have to seriously look at it and think to themselves, do we want him in our team? And not in a harsh way, just a realistic way. Like, is he going to be good enough? Is he going to give us what we need? And if not, then you've got to think, well, okay, who else are we going to go with? And again, it's going to be difficult because I don't think West Indies. Look, you can look at your Jason Mohammeds, people like that. I mean, they give you quite a lot. He gives you quite a lot, Jason Mohammed, something like that. And they've got a strong squad, West Indies. I don't think they've got a terrible one. Okay. The other negative, Nicholas Pooran. Like, it's just, he is not fulfilling his potential whatsoever. 0-8, and what did he get in 30-20? I think he got 0-8 and 23. So he got 23 off 18, right? 2 sixes. And you're thinking, oh, he might get a big score here. No. He is someone who, unfortunately, I genuinely think is going to go down as one of the biggest wasted talents ever. And I know that sounds really harsh, but I genuinely think this. Hetmeyer is getting close to that level as well because West Indies have got players like this who genuinely are so supremely talented. These two players could easily be playing all 3 formats and scoring bucket loads of runs. Clearly, what's happened is, the T20s are there. He's been playing T10 stuff as well in Abu Dhabi and been performing well. But again, like T10 is not an international format, and if I'm being totally honest with you, it's not important whatsoever. So, like, Yeah, it's not great. And also seeing pictures, and I don't know why this really bugs me, but seeing pictures of him like on Instagram holding, the series trophy, I'm just like, you didn't you didn't really you didn't really give anything to the team, and he's holding it like, oh yeah, like I'm the man. And I'm like, you're not the man. You didn't perform very well. And again, like I don't want to be too harsh because like, it sounds like I'm having a moan. I'm sitting in my chair saying, oh, this guy's rubbish. When clearly he's not a rubbish player. I'm saying that it's more frustration on my part that actually he is so talented. I just feel like maybe is there an attitude issue there? Is there a mental block? And I think I've talked to a lot of cricketers, and most people have said to me that cricket's at least 70%. Someone said 90% mental. If that's the case, then clearly there's something there. And is he a player that's willing to learn as well? I don't know if he is. He wicket kept for them even in this game as well. I think he will potentially. Um, he'll probably play for them in the World Cup, if I'm being honest with you, because they'll look at him and say he's an X Factor player that if it comes off, then it'll be worth it. I just don't know if he will come off. I really hope he does, and I hope that he will make himself more available for West Indies. And to be honest with you, I want to see him in all three formats, and I want to see him testing himself because I don't feel like he's doing it at the moment. Playing the franchises is fine, but it's not the biggest test out there. It's not the biggest test out there even. So yeah, I think maybe he needs to look at it. And again, I'm sure he's not listening to this, and I'm sure he doesn't care what I think, to be honest with you. But from my point of view, I just think he needs to make sure that he's mentally there and he's willing to just say, I'm going to learn. Yeah, so that would be me on Nicholas Pooran. I'll leave it there. But yeah, I think definitely a negative for me. And then on top of that, I think I said Chris Gale, Nicholas Pooran. Apart from that, I mean, Obed McCoy looked okay. I wouldn't say he looked fantastic, but I thought he looked pretty good as well. And yeah, I think on the whole, they're okay. I said McCoy performed well. He was on my positives. So Fabian Allen, I think, was kind of in between. I know he got some runs and some wickets. I wouldn't say he was a massive standout for me personally, even though he did help them in that third one at a vital time. But yeah, he wasn't for me a big player kind of either way. Fiddle Edwards, I don't think he didn't impress me hugely, I'll be honest with you, but he wasn't terrible. So again, he wouldn't be in my positive or negative column. Okay, let's go to Sri Lanka then for the negative. First of all, so easy. The middle order of Sri Lanka was poor. So poor. Number 4, 5, 6 was just shocking. And for some reason, they moved Dickwella down. I would have kept Dickwella and Gunatilaka at the top and then Nisanka at 3 because, like, why not? Why wouldn't you do that? But yet, they didn't do that. And what ended up happening is it just even more so exposed their weak underbelly, which is exactly what it was. And 3, 4, and 5, you've got super experienced players in there. Chandimal, Andrea Matthews, Bandara did do well, so that's fine. But Chandimal, Matthews, and Tassar Pereira, even though Chandimal hit that 50, even though Chandimal hit 50 in the third T20, it was just one of the strangest 50s you'll see. It was 54-46. It was just so slow, and they slumped to 131. And whereas Bandara was going even slower than Chandimal, but he got his strike rate up to 125. He was 44-35. He at least tried to accelerate. Chandimal either didn't try to accelerate or he doesn't have the gears. One of the two. And I just think that realistically, going forward, I don't know if Chandimal and Andrea Matthews are the guys to take this team forward in T20s. I don't think they are. When Shanaka comes back in, is he going to pick these guys? Andrea Matthews reminds me. It just reminds me of when he first started out and he was in the T20 World Cup and he was opening the ball with Malinga, and he was so good. Like he wasn't express, but he had enough pace. Had good change ups, and he could bat right. And that's what he was seen as when he first came into the team for Sri Lanka. Nowadays, he is a phenomenal Test player who can bat a little bit as well. I think who can bowl as well. I think his bowling has been kind of here or there, really. It hasn't been fantastic in the sense that his fitness wasn't great, but he seems to be in a good place fitness wise now in terms of his weight and kind of just general fitness. So that's all fine. But I feel like the T20 game has just completely evolved and he hasn't evolved with it. Similarly, Chandamal as well just looks very, very dated with the way he plays. And he tries to play these like ramps and these paddles and stuff. And it doesn't seem like it's part of his game. Personally, I think, and it sounds really harsh because Chandamal scored that 50, but I think both players are not T20 players. I don't think either should be inside, if I'm honest with you. I think Andrew Matthews, as I said, is a class act, and I think he will still do a fantastic job for Sri Lanka in Test matches and in ODIs. But T20s, just batting wise, I mean, the softest missiles from Andrew Matthews were ridiculous. I mean, one he just hit straight to, he just tickled around the corner to 45. There was one which was from McCoy, which is coming across him, and he just didn't know whether to go backwards or forwards, and just tickled it behind again because he was so hesitant. As a test player, you think I'll just leave that, but then he's thinking I'm in T20 mode. I've got to attack this, and he's caught between it, and his bat's out here, and he is too late. He's nicked off, right, and he's basically played a false shot. Similarly, Chandamal, a couple of really, really tame dismissals, hitting one to I think it was backward point or gully. Again, like just looping it to him. Just even that, as I said, the 50 was just it was a tame 50. One where if you get to 50, you should be accelerating a T20. He wasn't. I just think both of them, and then you got Tisara Pereira on the other hand, who again just very very, very disappointing. And I do remember him bowling because he bowled the first over and he got absolutely slapped and he went for 2 overs for 21 for 42, sorry, even. So the first over he went for 19, and for some reason Sri Lanka thought, yeah, let's put him on, which was the worst decision ever. Again, after getting hit for 19 in his first over at the death, and then he got hit for what 23. Like, what are they thinking? And he, again, and it sounds harsh, but I say this about all players, and I'm very honest about it. I don't know if he is. I don't know if he is international standard. And again, it sounds harsh, but I think it's the truth. I think it's the truth. I just don't think he's international standard. He bowled 2 overs the whole series, and he's batting at what? Where's he batting? He's batting at 7, not getting any runs. He's supposed to be a finisher. Like, no, he shouldn't be in there. Dickweller's got to be in there, right? Yeah, he's in there. Fantastic. Got Dickweller in there. You got to have Crystal Pereira in there. What is this Hara Pereira doing in there? And he's going to be. And I know it sounds so harsh. He's going to be useless in India. I genuinely think so. Unless he really improves his bowling, I don't think there's any space for him in there. And they need to look at this because Dhananjaya, and I didn't mention him as one of my positives because he got hit for 6 sixes, but obviously he got a hat trick, Dhananjaya, and he's a leg spinner and an off spinner, which is so strange and it's weird to see, but it's actually very good to see, actually, to be honest with you. He's someone who has learned how to bowl both disciplines and bowl them quite well as well. Most bowlers, obviously, you're an off spinner or a leg spinner, and then you've either got a Dusra or a Googly, right? He doesn't. He just bowls, he either bowls his stock ball as a off spinner or a leg spinner, and then he kind of just adapts, I think, depending on when it's a right hand or left hand, and then he's got his change up. So he's a very skilled bowler. I wouldn't say he was my positive or negative, even though I thought on the whole he did bowl quite well. The last one he got slapped around quite a bit as well. He got, was it 4 for 53? So that's not ideal. So that's why he's in my in between category, I would say. But Sandakan and Hasaranga for me were standouts for sure. But yeah, so I think that's the biggest negative, was just that middle order and those 3 players: Angelo Matthews, Chandamal, and Tisara Pereira. But apart from that, the bowling was okay. I thought it was fine. I wouldn't really change too much. I'd like to see Avitha Fernando come in as well for Sri Lanka. I'd like to see Avitha Fernando get a chance. I think he looked really good in the Test matches, and they actually have quite a few fast bowlers now, Sri Lanka, who can bowl 140 plus kilometers per hour. So they've got to be utilising them. So for me, that would be how I'd go forward. Okay, that's the negatives and the positives and negatives for both teams. So I guess where does this leave us in terms of the T20 scope for both teams. And I think West Indies will be looking at this and saying we were expecting to win this. So this is not a case of, okay, what an amazing victory. I think they'll look at it and say, this was expected because we're at home as well and we're the T20 World Champions. I mean, if you were to push me, I would have looked at that team and said that they're a threat, right, to win again in India. And they've got players who've got experience playing in India as well, whether it be internationally or franchise cricket. So they know the conditions. They have the ability there as well. I just know West Indies are going to be one of those sides who are going to be so gung ho that it'll either be a question of they will go huge, right? They'll go huge and blow away some teams, or they get blown away themselves potentially. But we'll see. I think you can't count them out. I think they're one of the dark horses. Similarly, Sri Lanka, I think, are as well, because these conditions in the West Indies didn't help them as much as they will in India. With the spinners they've got as well, do not discount them. I genuinely think that's the case. And if they can get their selection policy right, similar with West Indies as well, both these teams can really make sure that everyone stays fit and they can put out their strongest teams. I think both teams are dark horses to go on. Sri Lanka are a fantastic tournament team as well. They're a fantastic tournament team. They always tend to overachieve at World Cups. So, yeah, I think don't discount them at all. And I'm really looking forward to seeing both teams play in the ODIs as well. I talked to Nikhil Uttam Chandani, and he said to me that the ODIs, the ODI format is West Indies' weakest format. So if that's the case, then it's going to be very interesting to see how they perform in it. Sri Lanka, I don't think have a very, very strong ODI team either, to be honest with you. So I think it will be a pretty competitive series, which will be good. But yeah, T20 wise, both teams look in a pretty good space in terms of look. They both got, I would say, Sri Lanka especially have got a lot of young talent coming through. But actually, to be fair, West Indies do as well when I think about it. So we've got two teams who've got good young players coming through in the format who are skilled. They've also got the older heads as well. In some cases, I think some of the older heads probably, as I've mentioned, potentially need to call it a day in this format anyway. Let's see how it goes for both. And I think for me, it's been very eye-opening to see that, look, the preconceived, stereotypes where Sri Lanka will have very good spinners, which to be fair, they did, but also they don't have any pace in there, has now gone. And similarly in India, there was that same stereotype for quite a lot of years, and that's gone as well if you look at their pace attack. With West Indies as well, they were looked at a team that would have a huge amount of pace bowlers, right? People that will come in and bowl rapid. But you look at their T20 team, and no one is in there like that, right? Fiddle Edwards obviously played one of the games. He didn't play the last game. Abed McCoy is not express. Dwayne Bravo's clearly not express. Jason Holder's not. Kieran Pollard's not. They had the two spinners in there. So they actually utilize the pace of the ball, the variations, the cutters. Yeah, when you bring back in a Shane Thomas, he's got rapid pace. Even obviously Andre Russell, we know can bowl 90 plus, whether he bowls or not. I think him bowling, by the way, if he comes back in, he's got to bowl. He's too hit and miss with the bat to say that he can't bowl. He's got to be fit enough, and they've got to just force him to bowl at least 3 overs. And if not, then you just say, well, do we want to pick you? And I know he has that X factor on the bat. I know, and everyone's going to say to me, in the franchise, he smashes it. I understand that. I do understand that. But when you have someone that's skilled, you've got to utilize them. And it sounds so strange because like pace isn't everything. But if you have an all-rounder in your team that can bowl 90 plus miles an hour, why the heck is he not bowling in a T20 format where on pitches in India where pace will give you something, whereas you have someone who's got no control or not a lot of control, who's bowling slower than that and trying to bowl quick, they'll get slapped. So I think you got to put him in there and you got to make him bowl. So that's my thoughts on it. Okay, I think I've talked enough about this, haven't I? Yeah, I have. Thank you, though, everyone, for tuning in. Please do remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really, really does help. So please do remember to do so. It's really greatly appreciated, and I think I say on all my streams now, you're a legend. So you are all legends. I really overwhelmed by the support so far as well for the channel, and hopefully, God willing, it continues. But yeah, please like the video, share it with your parents, your family, your siblings, your cousins, all that good stuff. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic day and week. And I'm really looking forward to the ODI series, which I should be doing some live streaming on. So, yeah, fingers crossed we can get some live streaming for that because I'm looking forward to the ODIs. Cool. Thank you very much, guys.